Imagine you are standing in the atrium of a Roman villa. The morning light falls through the opening in the roof onto the pool below, and for a moment, just a moment, everything looks exactly as it did yesterday. Then you notice the blood on the marble. In this dramatization, you are Corinna, a freedwoman of the house of Gnaeus Servilius Cascae. You managed his correspondence. You kept his accounts. You were, by Roman law, no longer property. That status is about to become complicated. The proscription lists were posted 4 days ago. Your patron's name appeared on the 3rd tablet. Yesterday, soldiers found him hiding in his own grain stores. This morning, according to the brutal custom of these times, his head was displayed in the forum as proof of death. Now comes what the Romans called the sectio bonorum, the division of goods, and you, legally speaking, are part of those goods. What happens next is documented in Roman legal sources. When a man was proscribed, his entire estate became property of the state. That included slaves, obviously, but it also included freedmen and freedwomen who were still legally bound to their former master through a system called obsequium. Think of it as contractual loyalty. You were free, but you still owed your patron respect, service, and a portion of your labor. When he died, that obligation transferred, often to the state itself, which could then reassign you however it saw fit. 14 people stand in the atrium with you. Slaves who never earned freedom, freedmen who hadn't yet escaped dependency, and you are not chained. In Roman law, you don't need to be. Your legal status already binds you more effectively than any iron. A man enters through the vestibule. His toga is spotless, his expression professionally empty. He carries a wax tablet and a stylus, tools that historians have recovered from sites like Pompeii, tools that look almost bureaucratic in their ordinariness. He does not introduce himself. The fasces symbol carved into his tablet case announces his authority. He serves the triumvirate. He serves the new order. He serves the system that has swallowed your patron whole. You are no longer clients of Casca, he says. His Latin is crisp, educated, the kind of administrative Latin we find in legal documents from this period. You are no longer members of this household. Everything you are attached to is forfeit. Each word lands like a stamp on a document. Final, irreversible, official. And in this moment, Corinna understands something that historians have long recognized about Roman power. The true horror was not the violence. Violence was chaos. Violence ended. This was different. This was the system that came after, a mechanism that required no anger, no personal cruelty. Forms were enough. Procedures were enough. We have evidence of this bureaucratic efficiency. Slave sale contracts from Roman Egypt, census records from the provinces, manumission documents that freed people with one hand while binding them with the other. Rome was, in many ways, the first truly bureaucratic empire, and that bureaucracy could be terrifying, precisely because it was so ordinary. The official continues speaking. He discusses categories, classifications, redistribution protocols. The words are administrative, almost peaceful, as if discussing the movement of furniture rather than the erasure of lives. Corinna watches him mark symbols onto his tablet. She does not know what they mean. In Rome, knowledge belonged to those who governed, not to those who are governed. You are separated from the others without ceremony. A woman leads you to a smaller room. Her face shows neither kindness nor hostility, only function. You sit, name, Corinna, freedwoman of former dependent. She corrects, not cruelly, accurately. Your patron is proscribed. His property is forfeit. His obligations are forfeit. Your status is under review. This legal limbo was real. Roman jurists debated extensively what happened to a freedman's obligations when a patron died under proscription. Some argued the obligation transferred to the state. Others argued for the patron's heirs, if any survived. The uncertainty was itself a form of control. What was your function in the household? I managed correspondence. I kept accounts. I organized his library, and literate in Latin and Greek. Yes, the woman makes a mark. You cannot see what it means. Any specialized knowledge. I know his letters. The woman's stylus stops. I kept copies, you continue. Your voice steady, because steadiness is all you have. Busyness, correspondence, personal correspondence, all of it. For the first time, something shifts in her expression. Wait here. As you wait in that small room, memories come uninvited. The smell of the library in the afternoon, the sound of Casca dictating letters, choosing words carefully because words had consequences. You remember the letters you copied. Senators, businessmen, generals. Some of those names are now on the same lists that killed your patron. Others are the ones who made those lists. You know who wrote to whom. You know who promised what. That knowledge kept you valuable in Casca's household. Now that same knowledge makes you dangerous. And in Rome, dangerous things were handled carefully, contained, controlled, or eliminated. We know from Cicero's letters that household slaves and freedmen often knew far more than they were supposed to. They copied sensitive correspondence. They overheard private conversations. They witnessed deals and betrayals. When the proscriptions began, this knowledge became currency and danger. Several ancient sources describe informers who betrayed their masters for reward, and others who were killed precisely because they knew too much. The woman returns with a man. His toga bears the narrow purple stripe of the equestrian order. We know this detail from multiple ancient sources describing Roman dress codes. He studies you without speaking, and Corinna recognizes this gaze. It is not cruelty, it is appraisal. This is the one with the correspondence knowledge. She claims access to household letters, unverified. I don't need verification, I need containment. That word, containment, captures something important about how Roman power operated. The system didn't always punish. Sometimes it absorbed, it reassigned, it redirected. If you were useful enough, you might be preserved. Not out of mercy, but out of efficiency. She'll be assigned to the Lentulus estate. The man decides. Restricted access. Supervised correspondence only. He looks at Corinna directly. You will continue the work you did for Casca, but now you will do it for the state's interests. Do you understand? You understand perfectly. You have been classified. Not as property, not as free, but as something in between. A resource too useful to discard, too dangerous to liberate. Yes, Dominus. The word tastes like ash, but you speak it anyway, because Corinna has already learned what thousands learned during the proscriptions. Those who hesitated were lost. Now, before we continue Corinna's story, we need to understand the world she has been thrown into, because what happened in Rome in 43 BCE wasn't random chaos. It was organized terror, and the more you understand that system, the more Corinna's choices will make sense. The Roman Republic, by 43 BCE, was a republic in name only. Julius Caesar had been assassinated a year earlier by senators who believed they were saving the old order. They weren't. They were accelerating its collapse. Into that chaos stepped three men who would divide Rome between them. Octavian, Caesar's 19-year-old adopted son, Mark Antony, Caesar's most powerful general, and Lepidus, a political survivor who controlled crucial legions. They met on a small island in a river near Bononia, modern Bologna. For 3 days they negotiated. And then they made a list, the proscriptions. And we have detailed accounts of this from ancient historians like Appian and Cassius Dio worked like this. Names were posted publicly. Anyone on the list became an enemy of the state. Their property was forfeit. Their lives were forfeit. Anyone who killed a proscribed man and brought proof to the triumvirs would receive a bounty, typically a portion of the victim's wealth state. Sanctioned bounty hunting. According to ancient sources, the initial lists included 300 senators and 2,000 equestrians. The Roman upper class. The lists grew as the triumvirs settled personal grudges, eliminated creditors, and, crucially, needed to pay their armies. What often gets lost in the political history is the human cost beyond the primary victims. When a wealthy Roman was proscribed, his entire household entered legal limbo. Slaves, sometimes dozens or hundreds of them, became state property to be sold at auction. Freedmen lost their patrons and their legal protections. Wives could have their dowries confiscated. Children could be left destitute. We have evidence of this chaos in the sources. Appian describes wives betraying husbands for reward, and other wives hiding husbands at the cost of their own lives. He describes slaves who informed on their masters and slaves who died protecting them. The proscriptions created a world where every relationship became suspect. Every piece of knowledge became potentially lethal. This is the world Corinna now inhabits. But to fully understand her situation, we need to understand Roman slavery itself. Because it was not what most people imagine. Roman slavery was brutal, yes, but it was also bureaucratic, systematic, and, in its own twisted way, meritocratic. A talented slave in Rome might be educated at their master's expense. They might manage businesses, practice medicine, teach philosophy. The most capable could earn freedom, becoming liberti, freedmen, though they remain bound to their former masters by legal obligation. This created something strange, a system that was simultaneously oppressive and offered a kind of mobility. Some freedmen became wealthy, some became influential, a few even became powerful, but they never became equal. Roman law made sure of that. The word libertus freedman was inscribed on tombstones as a permanent mark. No matter how successful you became, that origin followed you. So when we talk about Corinna being free, we need to understand what that freedom actually meant in 43 BCE. She could not hold public office. She could not serve in the legions. She could not marry a citizen of senatorial rank in court. Her testimony was worth less than a full citizen's, and in some cases could only be given under torture. Just like a slave's, her former master could demand days of labor from her each year. He could require her to seek his approval for major decisions. If she died without heirs, her property reverted to him. Freedom, in Rome, was a spectrum, and Corinna was somewhere in the middle, legally free, but practically constrained. And now, with her patron dead and the state claiming his assets, even that limited freedom was in question. With that context in mind, let's return to Corinna's story, as she enters the household that will determine whether she survives. The Lentulus estate sits on the Palatine Hill. This detail matters. The Palatine was where Rome's oldest and wealthiest families built their homes. Archaeological evidence shows houses there, with elaborate frescoes, private gardens, sophisticated plumbing. It was the address of power. Corinna arrives as afternoon shadows stretch across the courtyard. A woman named Tertia, representing a real type. The senior freedwoman who managed elite Roman households, meets her at the servants' entrance. "You will work in the tablinum," Tertia explains. The tablinum was the office of a Roman house, where business was conducted and records kept. You will handle correspondence as directed. You will copy what you are told to copy. You will not discuss your work with anyone. The rules continue. Each one draws the boundaries of Corinna's new existence. Violation of any condition results in reassignment. That word again, reassignment. It hangs in the air with all its unspoken implications. Gaius Lentulus is not what Corinna expected. He is older, perhaps 60, with the weathered face of a man who spent decades in the provinces before returning to Rome. This was common for elite Romans: military service, provincial administration, then a return to the capital. "I've reviewed your assessment," Lentulus says. "Literate in both languages, experienced in correspondence management, extensive knowledge of the Casca household's affairs." He pauses. "That last point is why you are here instead of at auction." "I assumed as much." Dominus. Assumptions good. Most people in your position stop thinking. What Lentulus says next reflects something we know from Roman sources. Elite households, genuinely valued intellectual slaves and freedmen. We have evidence of slaves who served as secretaries, accountants, even advisors. The relationship could become almost collegial, while never forgetting the fundamental inequality. I don't need a scribe, Lentulus continues. What I need is someone who understands how information moves in this city, who can read patterns in correspondence. Can you do that? The question is a test. Corinna recognizes it. I did it for Casca. Casca is dead. Yes, because he didn't see the pattern in time. For a long moment, Lentulus says nothing. Then slowly, he nods. We begin tomorrow. The days settle into rhythm. Corinna works in the tablinum, sorting correspondence, identifying connections, mapping the web of obligations that holds Roman society together. This work was real. Elite Romans maintained vast correspondence networks, Cicero's surviving letters, and we have over 900 of them, show how information flowed between households, how alliances were negotiated, how political intelligence was gathered and analyzed. A skilled household member who could track these networks was genuinely valuable. Lentulus tests her with small tasks, finding connections he already knows, identifying patterns he has already seen. When she succeeds, he reveals slightly more. But what surprises Corinna is the conversations. Lentulus speaks of history, patterns, the way power moves through institutions. At first, Corinna listens in silence. Then, cautiously, she begins to respond, not with challenges, but with observations. He listens more than he speaks. He seems interested in how she thinks. And slowly, something shifts. The peculiar intimacy that could develop between masters and their most trusted freedmen is documented in Roman sources. Because Corinna has nothing to gain from flattery, she is already at the bottom. She can be honest in ways that social equals cannot. Paradoxically, her low status creates a space for genuine exchange. Lentulus is surrounded by people who tell him what they think he wants to hear. They perform loyalty. They compete for favor. Corinna, by contrast, simply observes reports, analyzes. It is not friendship. Roman society didn't really allow for friendship across such status gaps. But it is something, a working relationship built on demonstrated competence. And in the dangerous world of the proscriptions, competence has value. 3 months pass. Corinna has become, if not comfortable, at least stable. She understands her function. She performs it well. Then the summons arrives. You are required at the house of Marcus Aemilius Lepidus tomorrow. Lepidus, one of the triumvirs, one of the 3 men who signed the death lists. Lepidus was historically the weakest of the 3 triumvirs. Powerful in the moment, but lacking the political skill of Octavian or the military reputation of Antony. Ancient sources describe him as insecure, suspicious, prone to overreaction that night. Corinna does not sleep. She thinks through every letter she has read, every pattern she has identified. What has she seen that Lepidus might want? What does she know that threatens him? Lepidus's house is vast, decorated with aggressive displays of wealth. Corinna waits in a windowless room for 2 hours before the triumvir enters. You were in the house of Casca, he says. Not a question. Yes, Dominus. You handled his correspondence. You saw his letters, you know who wrote to him. There is no safe answer. Corinna chooses carefully. I copied letters as instructed. I did not interpret them. Lepidus's expression is patient. That patience is more frightening than anger would be. Let me explain your situation. I have received reports that certain sensitive correspondence may have passed through the Casca household, letters that would be embarrassing if they surfaced. This fear was real. During the proscriptions, the triumvirs themselves had reasons to worry about what might be in the correspondence of men they killed. Alliances shifted constantly, A letter written in one political moment could be devastating in another. We know from ancient sources that destroying dangerous documents was a priority, and that some documents survived anyway, hidden by slaves and freedmen who understood their potential value. I need to know if such letters exist, Lepidus continues, and if they do, where they might be found. Corinna's mind races. She thinks about the copies she made, the insurance she accumulated. Documents that could prove Lepidus communicated with Caesar's enemies before conveniently switching sides. She thinks about what happens to people who give powerful men what they want. They become loose ends. I truly don't know, Dominus. If such letters existed, they would have been destroyed in the confiscation. Lepidus watches her. His patience does not waver. I see. He moves toward the door. You remain in Lentulus's household for now, but understand this, you are not as invisible as you believe. Every word you speak reaches me eventually. He pauses before leaving. Think about what loyalty means in this new Rome. Think about whether the past is worth more than the future, and think about how quickly things can change for someone in your position. That night, Lentulus is waiting. You spoke with Lepidus. I was summoned. What did he want? Corinna hesitates. The wrong answer could end everything, but so could evasion. He suspects there are letters that could damage him. He wanted to know if I have access to them. And do you? Here we reach the heart of Corinna's dilemma, and it is a dilemma that, according to ancient sources, many people in similar positions faced. Knowledge was power, but it was also danger. The same information that might protect you could also make you a target. Such letters may exist, Corinna says carefully. I cannot confirm or deny their location. Lentulus nods slowly. Lepidus is powerful now, but power in Rome is temporary. Triumvirates do not last. He pauses. Information, on the other hand, retains its value. He stands. Continue your work. Trust no one. And remember that survival requires more than obedience. It requires usefulness, sustained, ongoing usefulness. After the Lepidus encounter, Corinna changes her approach. Not drastically. Rome noticed drastic change. Subtly, she begins to build networks, small favors for other freedmen, selective information sharing, the creation of debts and obligations. This kind of network building among enslaved and freed people is documented. We have evidence of collegia, associations of slaves and freedmen from different households who met regularly, ostensibly for religious purposes, but actually for mutual support and information exchange. The Roman elite tolerated these networks because they were useful. Information flowed in both directions. But they also watched them carefully. Corinna learns which slaves carry messages between houses. She identifies which freedmen are trusted, which are desperate. She maps the informal channels through which real power flows. Lentulus watches this. He says nothing. Her work in the tablinum continues, but now with different purpose. Before, she identified patterns to demonstrate competence. Now she makes sure Lentulus knows how much he depends on that competence. She offers insights no one else provides. She becomes, slowly, indispensable. This strategy, making yourself too valuable to discard, is documented throughout Roman sources. Skilled slaves delayed manumission because freedom meant losing access. Freedmen cultivated dependence because dependence was protection. It was not freedom in any meaningful sense, but it was survival with agency. One morning, Lentulus calls her to his study. I've made inquiries about formalizing your status. If I were to take you into my household as a recognized freedwoman, under my protection, certain legal safeguards would apply. Corinna's heart beats faster. And what would such status require? Continued service, continued discretion, continued value, and the correspondence that concerns Lepidus. That would remain, as it has always been, unknown, hypothetical. A pause. Insurance for both of us. Corinna understands the offer formalized protection in exchange for continued leverage, a partnership built on mutual dependence. It is not freedom. But in Rome, freedom is a word that means different things to different people. I accept Dominus. The months that follow are not easy. Lepidus continues to watch. His agents appear at social functions, asking questions. Messages arrive with veiled threats, but Corinna's formal status provides a shield. As Lentulus' freedwoman, she falls under his legal protection. Any move against her is a move against him. She continues to work. She continues to watch. She continues to build. And she begins to see something others have missed. The triumvirate is unstable. Lepidus is the weakest link. Octavian is patient, calculating, waiting. Antony is distracted by the East. This observation reflects actual history. Within a decade, Lepidus would be stripped of power and exiled. Within 2 decades, Antony would be dead, and Octavian would rule Rome alone as Augustus. The world Corinna navigates is on the edge of transformation. As Corinna sits in the tablinum, copying letters that could build or destroy careers, she remembers the woman she was 7 months ago, standing in an atrium, watching blood dry on marble, waiting to learn what the system would make of her. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone the system never fully anticipated, not a rebel. Rebellion was suicide, not merely a servant. Servants were predictable. Something else, something patient, something that watches and waits and remembers. Rome processed her like a resource, classified her like an object, assigned her like a tool. But tools can be turned, and in a city built on paperwork and procedure, on secrets and leverage, sometimes the person holding the pen has more power than anyone realizes. The character of Corinna is fictional, a composite, based on what we know about the lives of freedwomen in late Republican Rome. But her situation was real for thousands of people caught in the proscriptions of 43 BCE. Ancient sources record over 2,000 names on the death lists. The total number affected, slaves, freedmen, family members, clients, may have been 10 times that. Most of those people left no record. Their names are lost to history, but the system that processed them, that is documented in extraordinary detail. Roman bureaucracy was thorough. Roman law was precise. And Roman power was built on the efficient management of human beings as resources. Corinna's story is one version of what survival looked like inside that machine. What would you have done?